Hi guys. Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at finalizing and setting up the character blueprint that me and Johnny have already started for you. So this is Hammer Girl BP. So if we take a quick look inside, there is already some stuff in here that we won't actually look at today. We will finish connecting things up, but we won't actually look at. But there are some other blueprints that we will need to create in order to get the player moving around the world and in order to get set up. The first thing you notice is if you do press play on our little test map, you will spawn as a little floating camera and not actually as Hammer Girl. So, in order to fix this, what we need to do is we need to create a game mode blueprint. And I myself, to keep things neat, I've created a folder here called Blueprints, which I'm going to save all my stuff in. It might be a good idea for yourselves to create a folder with your own name and just store everything that you create in this folder for the project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, go to Blueprint Class and go to Game Mode, and I'm going to call this the Game Mode. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. You could call it the Hammer Girl Game Mode if you wanted to, but we'll just call it the Game Mode. And then go into this Game Mode. And there's some options in here, but the only one that we're going to look at the minute is the default pawn class. Now the default pawn class, we want UE4 to reference our Hammer Girl BP. So from this drop down, what we're going to do is select Hammer Girl BP. We're going to compile that, save it. We're going to go back to our test map and we're going to click play. So we're expecting to spawn as Hammer Girl, but as you can see, we're still this floaty camera. Now, the reason for that is because we've not actually told UE4 to look for the new game mode we have just created. So, if you go to your world settings tab, mine's on the right here, if you don't have it, go to window and tick world settings. And there's a game mode override. What we're going to do is we're going to drop down and we're going to tick the game mode. That is now looking at the game mode that we created over here. So, if I press play, I now spawn as Hammer Girl, but I have no movement, I can't jump, I can't walk forward. That is because there are still some things that we need to do in order to set up Hammer Girl. The first thing being is we need to make a move backwards and forwards. In order to do this, we're going to need to create some inputs. In order to do this, if you go to Edit, Project Settings, and Input, here you'll see there's Access Mappings and Action Mappings. So what we'll do is we'll go into Action Mappings, we'll click this little plus, and you can see we've got a new Access Mapping. We're going to call this Access Mapping Move Forward. Okay, and we're just going to use simple WASD, WASD. So we're going to need a W and we're going to need an S for backwards. Scroll and find that. So we've got a W and S, but we're also going to need another axis mapping, and this one is going to be called Move Right. And obviously for those, we're going to assign those as A, and we're going to assign the other one as D. Okay, so the important thing here to notice is there's some scales, and what we want is we want W to be a 1 and we want S to be a -1. So if we're pressing W, we're going forward 1. If we're pressing S, we're going back 1. And for move right, we want A to be -1 and D to be 1. Right, so with that set up, now if we press play, we still can't move. That is because we haven't actually set up those input movements now in Blueprints. So I want you guys to go over to your Hammer Girl BP, and in this BP, if you right click and you search for move forward, you should have an axis event called move forward. So there's the move forward axis input. We might as well get the move right input now. I'll grab that, because we can do these relatively at the same time. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding a movement input in order to make the player move forward or to move right. So if we drag off this and add movement input, so this axis value is either going to spit as a number of 1 when W is being pressed, 0 when nothing is being pressed, and -1 when S is being pressed. So we want to take this value and we're going to stick it into the scale value, and we're going to do the same thing down here. That was a little shortcut. Control W duplicates the blueprints that you've got, whether or not you know that, and we're going to stick those two in there. So now we've got the start of making our player move forwards and backwards. But in order to actually get the correct direction, we need to go to get control rotation of the pawn. So with the get control rotation, we need to be able to see the values of X, Y, and Z. So if you right click here and you split the struct pin, we're going to be able to get those values now. And we can just choose the one that we want. We actually want the roll, so we want to drag off the roll and we want to make rotator, but we don't want the roll to go from X to X, so we're going to snap that and we're going to go from X to the Z. So from here now we're going to get forward vector, and we're also going to get right vector, and the forward vector will go into the world direction of the move forward, and the right vector will move into the move right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to comment this and call this player movement. It's very important to keep your blueprints tidy and neat, just in case anyone else wants to go over them, especially into the industry. It's nice to be able to look at someone else's blueprints and understand the flow or know exactly where to go. So with that set up, I'm going to compile, I'm going to save, and I'm now going to press play. And now the player can move. Can't jump, but we can move. We can't run. So the first thing that we're going to do now is we're going to set up sprint, a nice easy one. In order to make the player sprint, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go back into edit, go back into project settings, and go back into input. And this is where action mappings come in. So we're going to add an action mapping, drop down here. As you can see, we've got this new action mapping here, and we're going to call this sprint. And for this sprint, we're just going to use left tab. That's kind of left shift. That's kind of what's used generally. So now we've got that left shift set up. If we go back into Hammer Girl, we can now call sprint. So from this sprint, what we are going to do is we have set the Hammer Girl's walking speed in order to access the character movement. If we go up here and drag in character movement, so like I say, 400 is already walk. So we're going to drag off this and we're going to set speed, set max walk speed. So we're going to set max walk speed, and when this is pressed, what we're going to do is we're going to simply double the value of the walk speed, and then when it is released, we are going to go back to 400. Just put a comment around it, save that, go back to our test map and press play. So now when we hold down shift, the player moves a little bit quicker, and when we let go, back to walking. Sweet. So now what we can do is we can make Hammer Girl jump, and this is just going to be as simple as the sprint. first of all, we need to go back into project settings, into our inputs, add a new input, and this is going to be called jump. And we will use spacebar. So in Unreal, there's actually already a jump that we can call. So jump action event. So this is the action event that we've called. And what we want to do is, when it is pressed, we're just going to call jump. And that's already built into UE4. So it's as simple as that. And then if we do a released, we're going to stop jumping. And that will stop the player jumping. I'm going to put a nice comment box around this. Compile, save, go to our test map, move a little bit, and now when we press spacebar, the player will jump, play a nice little jumping animation, and it's as simple as that. So the whole purpose of Hammer Girl is she has a hammer. So we've already set up the hammer code for you, but in order to equip the hammer, we're going to need another input. So we go to project settings again, back to input, we're going to add a new one, we're going to call this equip hammer, and we're going to use E, interact, E. Super. If you don't want to use these keys, you can feel free to change them to your own selections. So now we're just going to call equip hammer, and we are going to plug it into here. You don't have to worry about any of the code, but basically, if the hammer's equipped, yes, true, equip the hammer to the socket. You'll be able to see this in a second. So this is when the hammer's not equipped, so it will be sheathed on her back, and then this is when the hammer is equipped, and it will be changed to a different socket that will go to her right hand. We've set this up for you because it was a little bit fiddly. So we press play, as you can see, hammer's on the back, we press E, it snaps out to her hands, we press E again, it goes back to the player. Plays back, so great. We've got a hammer, we can jump, we can sprint. Now we need to be able to actually use the hammer. And the way the hammer works is that there's a volume in front of the player, and when the hammer is used, it checks to see if it should apply damage to an object. It's very simple. If you want us to talk it through with you in more detail in the class, once we've given this tutorial out, feel free to come and ask us, and we will try and help as much as we can. But again, in order to make the hammer attack, we need to go back to project settings, into input, and what we are going to do is we're going to make another one, and we're going to call this action, or attack, we'll call it action, and this is going to be left mouse button. So when we press the left mouse, if the hammer's equipped, Hammer Girl is going to hammer. So go back to close this, go back to our Hammer Girl BP, and if we put in here now, action, and we are going to plug this in here. So compile, save, and we're going to go and play. So if we equip and click, she does a little animation of her hammering. If we unequip, there's nothing to attack because she doesn't have a hammer up. There's a few things that you might notice now, just to tidy the blueprint up. If we jump, she doesn't actually have an animation for when the hammer's out. So what we are going to do is, in order to solve that problem, is we're going to go into our Hammer Girl BP. We're going to go to our jump. What we're going to do is we're going to make it so that when the player jumps, it resets her inventory so that she will be able to play the correct animation when she's falling in the air. So from jump, just after it, we're going to call a custom event that we've already set up called reset inventory. If I show you where it is over here, this is just a custom event. If you don't know how to make a custom event, right click, custom event, and then this can fire off your own thing. We've called it reset inventory, and then this is just going to set the hammer unequipped and attach it back to a back. So if we compile, save, and press play, and we get out the hammer, if we jump, puts away the hammer and allows it to play a falling animation. So that's great. That's the player almost set up. So the player's all set up, but there's one more thing that we can do to improve this, because we're using the mouse to point and click. We're going to go into our blueprints folder. We're going to right click, blueprint class, and we're going to make a player controller. I'm going to call this the player controller. Save that. And we're going to open it up. And there's a few things that we're going to tick in here. We're going to show mouse cursor. As I've been playing on screen, I've not been able to see my mouse cursor. Unfortunately, because Camtasia likes to show mouse cursors all the time, you'll be able to see it. But if you were to go through this process, you wouldn't be able to see a mouse cursor. So if we tick show mouse cursor, we need to enable click events. Touch events, because we're not on mobile phone. But just to make a bit more professional, if you wanted to, you could change your mouse cursor. I'll change it to crosshairs. We're going to compile, we're going to save, and go back to our test map. We're going to press play, and that has not actually been assigned. So what we need to do is we need to go to our world settings, go to the game mode, and the player controller here is player controller. We're going to change that to the player controller. That's the one that we've just set up. So if we save, press play, now you should be able to see that we have a cursor, a crosshair, sorry, and where we click, we look, and it makes it easier to see what you're actually doing. It has to equip the hammer and attack where my cursor is. So that's great. That's the player setup. This has been our first tutorial. Sorry if it's been a bit janky. The second tutorial that we will do will be the first collectible, which will be the blue gems. Thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed that.